So how do you actually cost for your epoxy projects? In this video, I am going to show you the list we work according to when we price for all our epoxy projects. Let's go. So before we're going to start with today's video, can we please take a moment and show some love and support down in the comments below for all the Ukrainian people. They are literally fighting for their freedom. On top of that, can we please show some love and support for all the Russian people in Russia that's against this war? I can promise you, there's millions and millions of Russian people in Russia that's against this war. Now, I know this video is not going to make a difference or it's going to stop the war, but I can promise you, if an Ukrainian or a Russian people that's against this war read all the love and care in the comment section down below, it's going to make a difference for them. So good luck, Ukraine and the Russian people in Russia that's against this war. May God bless you. So how do you actually price and cost for your epoxy projects? Now, it can be an epoxy table, it can be a epoxy coffee table, it can be a cutting board, whatever the case may be. In this video, I'm going to give you a list of the items we work to when we quote on all our epoxy projects. Starting off with your wooden slab. That's the first cost you need to take into consideration. You need to make allowance for the slab or piece of timber wood you're going to use for your projects. Now, for someone like us, and that's also the second item on our list, is where do you buy the wood? Is it around the block? Is it 2 kilometers from you? For someone like us, we literally go into the bush to the physical guys that's cutting the trees down. We go and purchase all our slabs directly from them. Now, there's a lot of them where we're from. Say, for instance, the supplier in Tanin is about 4 to 5 hours drive from us. Now, that's an additional cost you need to take into consideration. We need to hire a trailer and we need to hire about 4 to 6 guys for the day to actually go there for the day, pick and choose our slabs, and then we actually need to come back. But on the way back, we stop at the kiln dry supplier. Now, that's the third item on our list. Do you actually buy dry slabs? Now, for someone like us in our country, we don't get dry slabs off the shelf. We actually have to do the whole process ourselves. So we will buy our slabs that's wet, and then we will put them in the kiln oven for about 3 to 5 to 6 months. It just depends on the thickness of the slab. So that's the third item you need to take into consideration, is the cost for the kiln dry company to actually make your piece of wood dry. The fourth item on our list is, once our slab is dry, we actually have to go and fetch our slab at the kiln dry supplier. Now, that's an additional cost because we have to hire a trailer again and 4 guys again to go and fetch our slabs and bring it back to our factory. Now, luckily for us, on the way back to our shop from the kiln dry supplier is our CNC supplier. Now, if you don't have a CNC machine, or if you have a CNC machine, this cost will most probably not be in this bracket. But for someone like us, we don't have a CNC machine because we are still a small company. And this is something we will invest in the far future. But for now, that's the fifth item on our list, is on the way back from our kiln dry supplier, we stop at our CNC supplier. Now, to typically flatten a slab, we pay per hour, and it takes around about 4 hours to flatten our slab at the bottom and on top. So that's the fifth item, is to physically flatten your slab on top and at the bottom. Now, while we have the trailer and while we have all those guys, we wait for our slab to be flattened on top and at the bottom, and we will use the same equipment to come back to our shop, and then we have all the guys to physically offload 1 or 3 or 4 slabs or whatever the case may be. So the sixth item on our list is, when you have the physical slab in your shop, you need to have a mold that you need to cast your epoxy in. It's basically a mold to prevent the epoxy from leaking out once you pour. Now, that's additional cost is the white melamine sheet that we use and the side wall panels, so the physical epoxy is not leaking out, the silicone to apply inside all the corners of the mold, and the ram wax you apply inside your mold to make sure that your epoxy is not going to stick to your wood. So that's the 6th item on our list. And the 7th item on our list is wood preparation. That means that once the slab is in our shop, we need to prepare the wood. It means that we need to remove all the bark and softwood from our wood to make sure the epoxy is not going to stick to a material that's not fastened to your physical slab. Now, we would typically allow 1 day of labor for the preparation of the mold, preparation of the slab, get everything ready to actually pour your epoxy. The 7th item on our list is the physical epoxy product you use. Now, this cost is going to be different for every single person, because in South Africa we can purchase epoxy in 33 kilogram kits or 40 kilogram kits. Where you are from in the US or Canada or India, you might purchase this in 5 kg containers, 200 kg containers, I don't know what the case may be, but as you go along you will get a good feel for how much epoxy you're going to use for, say, instance, a 6-seater table, or an 8-seater table, or a 10-seater table. So that's something you will pick up as you build more tables and more coffee tables. So say for instance, this 8-seater table, we will allow 2 kits of 40 kg epoxy, meaning that it's 80 kg of epoxy. Because remember, you can't go to your client and say, hey, listen, this table is going to cost you X amount, but halfway through the project, you're like, sorry man, we need 1 more kit of epoxy and it's going to cost X amount more. You don't want that. That's what losers do. So you need to make sure you allow the correct amount of epoxy for your project. The next item on our list is the physical pouring of the epoxy. Now, again, where we're from in South Africa, this is a very warm country. The temperatures reach very high during the day, and at night is average. It's not cold, it depends on if it's winter or summer. But for instance now, we are in the summer season, meaning that epoxy do not like warm weather. This takes us to the next item on our list is we would pour epoxy at night. So the first 12 hours of the curing process is in a cold environment. Now, I know we need to invest in room temperature control, but unfortunately for a small company like us, that's something we will invest in the far future. So we need to allow 3 nights of driving from my home all the way to the shop, spend 2 or 3 hours here, and that is the next item on our list, is to make allowance for that. Now, maybe you have a shop that you got room temperature control, or you pour the epoxy in your house where it's cold. You need to make sure that you allow the correct amount of time you spent pouring your epoxy. Now, if you're going to do a deep casting epoxy, this is something that will take you 1 shot and you're going to leave your table for 1 week. Now, for someone like us, we don't get deep casting epoxy. We cast our epoxy in layers, meaning we have to come back 2 or 3 days in a row to do the full thickness pour of our table. The next item on our list is once you're done pouring your epoxy into your table and your epoxy is fully cured after a week or whatever your epoxy supplier recommends your table needs to stand for, we need to load the table again on a trailer and head back all the way to our CNC supplier to go and make our table flat on top and at the bottom. Now, this is an additional cost. This is a trailer, it's another 3 or 4 guys, it's another 4 hours there, and it's to come back all the way. So that's the next item on our list, is to make provision for this. The next item on our list is once you finish flattening your slab on top and at the bottom, and you got your table or coffee table back into your shop, now you need to allow for the physical finishing of the table. It means that you need to allow for sandpaper, you need to allow for additional epoxy to close all your little holes and cracks you've got in the table. It's additional time to get the physical table where you want it to be. Now, this topic we can break up in 2 topics because you get 2 different finishes on your epoxy tables. You get a typical smoky frost finish where you will sand your table to about 320 or 400 grit, and then you will stop there and then you will oil your table. The second finish is a high gloss see-through polish finish. And if you're going for this finish, you need to make sure that you charge your client additional costs, because to polish a table like this is going to take you an additional 3 to 4 days to get high gloss polish finish. Now, if you're going for a high gloss polish finish, you need to remember to add costs for your physical polish, your polish pads, and your physical time to actually polish your table. That's a very big cost. For someone like us, we don't include this in our standard package. This is an additional cost on top of the epoxy table price. Now that your physical table is finished, you need a steel base. Now, if you're going for a wooden base, or for a company like us, we specialize in steel bases, you need to make allowance for your steel material, and you need to make an allowance for your steel labor. This is a critical step. For someone like us, we would typically allow 2 days to manufacture our steel bases, and that's the next item on our list, is when your steel base is finished for your table or your wooden base. For someone like us that's doing steel bases, we don't spray paint our bases. We take our steel base in for powder coating. Now, this is what I feel brings that exclusiveness to all our furniture, is rather to spray it, we send it in for powder coating. It's a better product to offer your clients. Now, once you have your steel base back in your shop, and the powder coating normally takes about 5 to 6 days. Once you have all the material back in your shop, you need to fasten your steel base to your table, and then your table is basically finished. Now, this whole process, you need to understand that all these costs, you need to allow an amount of labor. It means that the time you actually take to finish this project. Now, labor and profit is 2 different things. It doesn't mean that when you stand here for 6 days, that's your profit. You need to make allowance for yourself to work on this table. Now, yet again, for someone like us, you will get a good feel of how much time you are spending on a 6-seater table, how much time you're spending on an 8-seater table, on a 10-seater coffee table. You will begin to start to feel how many days you're using to spend on a table like this. Say for instance, this is an 8-seater table. The process, we allow 2 to 3 weeks from when we start to when we finish. And the physical labor, we allow between 8 and 10 days to finish a table like this. And if it's a high gloss finish, you will rather quote for 10 days of labor instead of 6, 7 or 8 days of labor. Now, your table is finished, your base is on, now you physically need to go and deliver your table. That's the next item on our list, is the delivery of your table. Now, yet again, you need to rent a trailer, or you have a trailer already. You need to get 3, 4, 5 or 6 guys. You physically need to allow for your gasoline or your diesel or your petrol to go to your client's house. You need to determine how far is your client. Is it 2 blocks from you? Is it 2 hours from you? That's an allowance you need to make on your pricing when you price for a table like this. And yet again, delivery day is part of Labor Day. It's not a free day the client gets where you spend the whole day preparing and wrapping. Oh, that's another item, by the way, the physical wrapping of your table. Don't forget that. But anyway, don't think that delivery day is a free day. That's a Labor Day. You need to allow for that. Now, this is a good summary of how we cost for all our tables. Now, when you have this cost, now you need to decide how much profit you want to take home. So for a company like us, working 2 to 3 weeks on a table like this, our profit margins can be from 25% all the way up to 40, maybe 45%, depending on the size of table the client orders. Now, this is an exclusive furniture piece, and it's not everyone that can build this. And you also need to remember stuff you need to pay in your shop, like your vehicles, your shop rental, your insurances. All that stuff plays a big role in costing for tables like this. You also need to allow, if say for instance 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months down the line there might be an issue on the table where a small piece of the slab wasn't dried correctly and there's a small crack or whatever in the table. You need to make sure that you allow for that. So hopefully in this video I gave you a very good cost analysis of how we price for all our tables. Now, this is the system we use. It's working for us, and like I said, you will start to get the feel for when you start doing more projects. Now, if this video was for whatever reason informative to you and there's something you learned, please support the channel, like this video, subscribe, hit the notification button, and I'll see you next week with another super cool video. Remember, leave love and support comments down in the section below for Ukraine and the Russian people in Russia that's against the war. Thank you guys, I love you, God bless.